Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. Oh, another thing you'll see a lot of if you spend a good amount of time in the French Quarter is car accidents. I have seen some impressive accidents. One of my favorites was one of the earliest things I saw in the French Quarter, like 2 nights into being a tour guide. I was standing waiting for a group, and there was a big pothole. This thing's like, half a foot deep and stretches across the entire road. And problematically, that night it had rained. So there was an even like line of water across it, so you couldn't tell how deep this was. And as I'm standing there waiting, a motorcycle comes down the street going way too fast. And clearly the driver just doesn't notice that that sheet of water is actually a pothole. So he hits it going full speed. And it was like in the movies. The motorcycle stopped, but the guy didn't. Like he just walked right over the end of the motorcycle. The thing is, he actually walked away, so I'm assuming he was fine, but it was impressive. Another night I was doing a story at a relatively quiet stop, and I'm literally in the middle of talking about how like people at this location hear loud bangs sometime, and we hear a crash, and I look over and a car has run a stop sign and slammed straight into a cop car that was coming the other direction. And he hit it hard enough that it bounced off of the balcony supports of the building. And like I walked by a week later and like they were bent inward at practically a 45-degree angle. So he hit hard. And all I could say to my guests was, well, at least we don't need to call the cops because they're already here and they're pissed. Another night I was doing a story in one of the more chaotic areas where there are a lot of people going by. And I have a small group, it was like 5 people. And we're in the middle of like just telling about a story when we hear a loud crash. And I look up and a car has tried to make a corner and just slammed into one of the cars parked on the corner. And yeah, he decimated that car. So he was probably going pretty fast. And of course, my guests are like, oh my God. And we go over and like, I check, are you okay? Is everything fine? And I plan to go back to do my tour, but my guests are still keeping an eye on things. And eventually I'm like, y'all okay? And they're like, is he going to call the cops? And I'm like, I don't know. I would assume so. And for the rest of the story, this one lady who I will admit gave me heavy Karen vibes, but she would not stop. Like every time I paused, be like, do you think he's going to call the cops? Should we call the cops? Do we need to call the cops? Is he going to call the cops? Is he going to try to run? And I'm meanwhile thinking, no, he's sitting on the side of the road. He's clearly not like running. And eventually she's like, oh, his friend has arrived. I bet he's going to get in that car and drive off with his friend. Like that's exactly the kind of thing people would do. And I'm like, no, it's not. No one's going to leave their car connected to another car and just get in the car with a friend and hope that the police don't notice. And like when I walked by later, he had ripped like the entire wheel off of his front driver's side. He wasn't going anywhere. But yeah, the cops never did arrive the entire time we were at that stop, the next stop, or me walking back. But walking back, I quickly checked, like, hey, honey, you okay? Did you call people? And he was like, yeah, they said they'll be here eventually. But my favorite car accident that's ever happened on one of my tours was at Marie Laveau's house, which that spot, people go around that corner going way too fast. Like it happens on a regular basis. And because a lot of tour guides stand in the gutter at that location on the side away from the parked cars, we're sort of out in the open, and some drunken assholes think it's hilarious to spin towards us, like to swerve to see if they can make us jump up on the sidewalk. And one night, I was standing there, and a guy came up, like was going around the corner, going way too fast, swerved to try to hit me. I jumped up on the sidewalk and like barely avoided him, and that was one that like I felt his driver's side mirror brush my purse as he drove past. And so I'm just like, whoa. And he gets to the corner, runs straight through the stop sign there, does not stop, which means he doesn't have time to see the enormous pothole on the other side of the street. And right when he makes it across the intersection, he hits it and rips out his entire undercarriage. And I'm just sitting here going, karma. But to make it even better, I'm just trying to finish off my story for my guests, and I'm struggling because first he's blocking the intersection, which causes cars to back up going both directions, and people are getting out of their cars and screaming at him, and he's going, I can't move! My car is in pieces! And finally, the bouncer from the bar there comes out to try to help. I'm assuming to try to help, maybe just to try to tell the guy to move. But he then gets in a fist fight with the bouncer from the Rawhide. And my group is sitting there going, we are not paying attention to your story because there is so much drama on the corner. But that night, yeah, I'm not sure if I ever finished that story or not, or if I just eventually was like, you know what, let's go watch the fight. But it was fun. So drive safe in the French Quarter.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.